Hello, I'm Yuuko Takide. The second Trump administration has begun, and America's foreign policy has undergone a dramatic shift. Military aid to Ukraine has already been suspended, and the United States and NATO's international deterrence power is clearly weakening. Meanwhile, China is struggling with a collapsing real estate bubble and a trade war that has left its economy in tatters. Amidst all this, the greatest point of focus is Taiwan. Today, we will thoroughly analyze how these two factors, the overly aggressive and America first stance of the Trump administration and China's deepening economic crisis are combining to raise the risk of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. So, let's get started. Prologue. The risk of a Taiwan invasion is rising. Let's get straight to the point. With the overly aggressive and America first stance of the Trump administration and China's deepening economic troubles from a collapsing property bubble, the risk of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is undoubtedly on the rise. However, the decisive moment has not yet arrived. China is carefully watching America's turmoil and the shifts in the international landscape, waiting for the right timing. The Trump administration has doubled down on America first and has already halted military aid to Ukraine. On top of that, President Trump himself has repeatedly made remarks showing his reluctance to support Taiwan, and China is watching closely for this opening. Based on this conclusion, I will now break down the situation into 5 chapters for a deeper analysis. Chapter 1. Why China has its eyes on Taiwan. Let's start with the fundamentals. China has long regarded Taiwan as an inseparable part of its own territory. Under Xi Jinping's leadership, national reunification has become the country's top priority. For China, which is grappling with a slowing economy and growing domestic unrest, achieving unification with Taiwan would serve as a lasting legacy and a powerful symbol to reinforce the legitimacy of the regime. Now, with the United States pulling back from its role in international affairs, China's calculations are shifting dramatically. Chapter 2. America's diminished deterrence. The Trump administration has already halted military aid to Ukraine. At the heart of President Trump's foreign policy lies a fundamental question, why should America sacrifice its soldiers for other countries? Regarding Taiwan as well, Trump made the following comments in a 2024 interview, Taiwan has done nothing for us. They take away our chip industry, yet they don't even pay for their own defense. In short, President Trump holds a deeply skeptical view toward defending Taiwan. Because of this shift, it's clear that America's deterrence power has significantly weakened compared to the Biden administration. And China is not overlooking this gap in deterrence. Chapter 3. China's war preparations are coming together. China has designated the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army in 2027 as a major milestone, and has been rapidly strengthening its military capabilities. Massive expansion of its ballistic missile arsenal, reinforcing air and naval superiority over the Taiwan Strait, enhancing its cyber warfare and electronic warfare capabilities. At this point, China's military is fully capable of enforcing a blockade of the Taiwan Strait and launching an initial surprise attack. With the Trump administration stepping back from its global commitments, these military options are becoming increasingly realistic for Beijing. Chapter 4. China's economic collapse and the global environment are pushing toward a Taiwan invasion. Now, let's take a closer look at what many of you are probably wondering, the connection between China's economic collapse and the risk of war. Right now, China's real estate bubble has burst, and the economy is rapidly deteriorating. The bankruptcy of major developers like Evergrande and Country Garden has sent shockwaves through the housing market, and local governments are teetering on the edge of financial collapse. In China, where real estate accounts for 20 to 30% of the entire economy, the bursting of the bubble is nothing short of a national crisis. Youth unemployment has soared past 20%, and public frustration is nearing its breaking point. This economic collapse has turned into a race against time for Beijing. The longer time passes, the worse the economy becomes. Maintaining military spending grows more difficult, and criticism of the regime intensifies. This is why a growing sense of urgency is driving China toward the goal of reunifying Taiwan to secure domestic support before the economy falls apart completely. Moreover, China has already come to terms with the inevitability of economic sanctions. Tariff hikes by the Trump administration, the ongoing decoupling of the U.S. and Chinese economies, semiconductor export bans. Given these realities, Beijing is calculating, if sanctions are unavoidable, then better to act now. End quote. On top of that, the international environment is working in China's favor. The United States has halted military aid to Ukraine. The Trump administration is showing an increasingly dismissive attitude toward its allies. Even NATO's unity is beginning to fray. With all these factors unfolding simultaneously, China sees its current moment of economic hardship as the perfect opportunity. Chapter 5. The timing of the Taiwan invasion. So, when exactly might China move? The United States has already suspended military aid to Ukraine, and its deterrence on the global stage is clearly weakening. What China is watching closely now is further turmoil within the Trump administration and the collapse of international unity. Then comes the year 2027, the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army, end quote, golden timing end quote, for China. If Trump's administration becomes diplomatically isolated, if NATO's unity frays and the international community becomes fragmented, and if China's domestic economy and military readiness align, Beijing could very well decide, end quote, now is the time. End quote. But here's what's crucial to understand, the Xi Jinping administration remains extremely cautious. She has made it clear that he will not take military action unless he is confident of victory. Why is he so cautious? Because he inherits a philosophy of, end quote, strategic patience, end quote, handed down from his idol, Mao Zedong. Mao consistently avoided reckless battles, insisting on waiting until victory was assured. Take the Chinese Civil War, for example. Facing Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces, Mao deliberately avoided head-on confrontation, expanding his power base in rural areas. Only after U.S. support for the nationalists declined and their forces weakened did Mao launch an all-out offensive. In the Long March, Mao chose a large-scale strategic retreat under desperate conditions, prioritizing the preservation and reorganization of his forces. This focus on, end quote, retreating from losing battles to rebuild and strike later, end quote, remains deeply embedded in the DNA of the Communist Party. This, end quote, strategic patience, end quote, is very much alive in Xi Jinping's leadership. He knows full well that a failed war could spell the collapse of his regime. Xi himself has repeatedly emphasized the need to, end quote, strengthen combat readiness and ensure victory. End quote. For him, it's not about fighting for the sake of fighting, it's about winning. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has also become a critical lesson for China. Beijing is carefully studying not just the military aspects, but also the risks of economic sanctions. Taking all these factors together, China is single-mindedly pursuing only wars it is certain to win. This is why, as we approach 2027, China will be watching closely, whether its domestic economy and military forces are fully prepared, whether the United States turns inward, and whether the international community remains divided. When all of these conditions converge, China will likely conclude, end quote, now is the moment. End quote. And at that moment, Beijing may very well decide to launch an invasion of Taiwan. Summary. Let's summarize. Under the second Trump administration, the risk of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is clearly rising. But China is carefully choosing its timing. The United States has already stopped aid to Ukraine, and its deterrence is weakening. President Trump himself has taken a passive stance toward defending Taiwan. China's military preparations are nearly complete, and its tactical options are expanding. Meanwhile, China is bracing for economic sanctions, and the global environment is becoming increasingly unstable. Add to that the pressure from its own economic collapse. However, before making a final decision, China still needs one crucial factor, a guarantee of victory. What we're seeing now is China carefully watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Finally, so, what did you think of today's analysis? Many of you may have thought that China's economic collapse and the trade war with America would reduce the likelihood of an invasion of Taiwan. But in reality, it's the opposite. Even if the timing isn't perfect, even if China cannot invade immediately, Xi Jinping's ambition to, end quote, make history by unifying Taiwan, end quote, burns brightly within him. If he fails to unify Taiwan, Xi risks going down in history as the leader who oversaw China's economic collapse. That is something he desperately wants to avoid. This is why Xi is quietly waiting for the moment when all the conditions align: America's inward focus, the fragmentation of the international community, and the full readiness of China's military. The risk of a Taiwan invasion is undeniably growing. And if such an invasion begins, it won't just be Taiwan that gets pulled into the conflict. The United States, Japan, Australia, South Korea, and Southeast Asia would all be drawn in. The world's economy and security would plunge into chaos, and our daily lives would not remain untouched. Soaring energy prices, disruptions in food supplies, and escalating economic sanctions, all of these would unfold in a chain reaction, with devastating impacts on our lives. Yet even so, in Japan, there are still many voices calling for dialogue or neutrality. But history has taught us a harsh truth: wishing for peace alone is not enough to stop war. What we need now is calm determination. The Taiwan crisis is not some distant possibility, it is a very real threat approaching us. As a nation, and as individuals, we must prepare ourselves and make thoughtful decisions. The future cannot be entrusted to others. We must each face reality and decide what kind of future we want to build. If this video has helped you in any way to think about these issues, I would be truly grateful. Thank you very much for watching.